So should you tell your child they're autistic?
You know what? I've never asked him this.
Do you know you're autistic?
Now, kudos to this mom. She did an amazing job having the conversation at the appropriate level with their child when she realized that she hadn't had this discussion. This is a conversation that I have so often with families about whether or not they should tell their child they're autistic, and if they want to tell their child, when and how, and if they don't, why they should. And there are so many different elements to this that people don't realize. For families where the children were diagnosed very early, honestly, the conversation of being autistic, you expect it to be something later on, because at 2 years old, you're not explaining autism to a 2-year-old. And so you're going through the motions and you're going to all these doctors and IEPs with the school and all this going on. There comes a point like this mom had where you realize, hey, I don't think I've ever had this conversation with my child. But then there's other cases where families may decide they don't want to tell their child they're autistic because they're worried that it might be a crutch, or maybe they haven't accepted the diagnosis yet. And then there's another area where families that have older children that were diagnosed a little bit later. So for my 8-year-old, when they were diagnosed, they could not really understand what the doctor was explaining. But our 11-year-old, when they were diagnosed, the diagnosis was said in front of the child with the doctor, and the doctor was able to help explain. There are so many different areas that parents are coming from this, but there are some key things to keep in mind. It's when, how, and why. So the when conversation really depends on your child. You want to make sure your child is at an age when they are cognitively and emotionally capable of understanding, but also the how ties into that, because what you explain to a 4-year-old is going to be drastically different than what you explain to a 13 or even 17-year-old. You want to meet them where they're at, and you're explaining to them you have a thing called autism, and it just means that your brain works differently than other people's. As they get older, you say, well, you need some different supports in place to help you navigate the world around you. But the biggest thing is just being open and honest. And if your child comes back with questions that you don't have the answer for, that's okay. Because in those moments, you can just be honest and say, hey, you know what? I don't know the answer to this question, but let's find out together. But the biggest thing about all of these different areas, whether it's a young diagnosis, an older diagnosis, if you believe you should or you shouldn't, is the why. Now, I'm just going to cover a couple areas. So the first one is your child needs to know about their diagnosis to help them as they grow into adults. Your child is going to need to know how to advocate for themselves, how to speak with doctors, getting supports in college, in the workforce. They're going to need to know how to self-advocate, and they cannot do that without the understanding that they're autistic. The second area, and it's that your child already knows that something is different about them. Without having that understanding of it's because I am autistic and my brain works different, your child is left to assume the worst. They think they're broken, that they're weird, that things that other kids say about them are their reality. Giving them the proper language, you're setting them up for success to navigate the rest of their life.